evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another amazing installment of the podcast, the only podcast that's dedicated to the revival of the drive-in culture. And we're so proud of it, and so happy that you guys are here to join us. A two-headed monster tonight. I got my good friend and co-host Mark in the house. Say hello, Mark.
Hello.
And we have a very cool episode. We went to the fans, the audience, for some topics, some discussion topics, and we're looking forward to getting into it. Now, you might be asking, how do I get in on some of the fun? And the way that we got these questions, Mark, was through the Patreon. Am I correct?
Yeah, we do Patreon exclusive episodes once a month for our subscribers where we ask people to send us questions or topics. And it's a generally a little more casual chat on those episodes. And we did that again because you and I were sort of at a loss for what to talk about today. And once again, the Patreon gang came through with probably a longer list of in-depth questions than we'll be able to get to today.
Not only that, we have been doing these amazing screenings for our Patreon folks. So if you guys are into it, jump into it. It's been a great way to kind of continue our season, even in the off season. Mark does a really great job of delivering a total Mahoning-centric virtual show with what we've been doing. And I can't say enough about it. And it really is. It's that tap back into the theater when we're not able to be there. But as far as the lack of topics, there's always stuff to talk about, always stuff brewing in the off season. The downside is we don't want to spoil anything. And this time of year, as we're literally days from Christmas, there's a lot of things being worked out where I would love to tell you some of the things that are going on right now in the booking end of things. But as far as contracts, things like that go, you never talk about anything until it's locked in. We learned those lessons in the past when we've missed out on some things but talked about it too early. So, but a lot of stuff to get excited about. I've been seeing a ton of movies. Mark, you've been going to the movies like crazy, right?
I've been going to the movies as often as possible.
It's the best. It's the best. I miss it.
Now that, my current lifestyle is on the free and easy side. So I'm hitting a lot of weekday matinees.
Yeah, that's my move too. I think we both have a form of unlimited A-list, whatever. And I tap it all the time. And now it's one of those things where I'm going to see movies that I probably wouldn't see. But like, hey, if I can go out and grab myself a lunch and be able to pop out the laptop for a little bit and then hit a movie, that's kind of the life, right?
Well, it all began with a little thing called Movie Pass. And
I was in right from the beginning.
Oh boy, I had it in that sweet spot where it was the $9.99 a month and you could see a movie a day at most theaters. And your standards do drop when it's free, but at the same time, it allows you to see things you normally wouldn't when there is a price tag attached. And you wind up seeing things that wind up being pretty good, some really fun surprises when you have that, hey, it's not going to cost me anything out of pocket. And
it's killer.
And now with the AMC A-list, it's 3 movies a week, and that usually it's no restrictions unless it's like a Fathom thing or something. So you can see IMAX, you can see 3D. So right after we record this, we're actually not recording as long as we normally would today because I'm headed off to see the new Matrix movie in IMAX. Why IMAX? Because why not?
Exactly. Yeah, I took my pops to see Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man in the IMAX. I took Virgie with us too. He loved it. It's a great situation to see crowds back at movies. Like I had this real kind of sense of community again at the movies, which is rare at the indoors, as we've talked about here. When I went to see Spider-Man now twice with Virgie.
Excellent.
How was your crowd? Was it insanity packed?
I went to see the new Spider-Man. I've been a fan of the character since I was a little kid. I loved the Raimi movies, the Garfield movies. I didn't really like the first one. I thought the second one was more fun. And the Hollands, I didn't really care for the first one, really liked the second one. So interested in this third one. I tried to go in as blind as possible because the trailers were starting to give away more and more things that should be a surprise while you're watching the movie. And people online are talking about stuff and spoiling things. And I was like, So I made sure that I saw the first show of the day at the local Alamo Draft House, figuring that their pre-show would be fun. And they have these like special menu items and special menus that look like Spider-Man masks you can keep. I'm a sucker for gewgaws and trinkets.
For gimmicks. Yeah.
So the crowd I saw it with apparently had never seen a trailer for this movie. Like apparently they just knew it was a new Spider-Man movie because they went nuts. It was like going to a pro sports event. It was people going, whoa, and cheering and wooing and applauding when certain characters showed up or certain things happened.
Yeah.
And it was a total blast. I loved it. I mean, I like the movie anyway, but I'll always like it more when I see something with an enthusiastic audience. And this was the first or second movie I've seen since theaters reopened that was a relatively crowded house.
Yeah.
And it just made it all that much better.
That experience, it happened occasionally, and the Marvel movies are great with it because when I was running one of the indoor theaters, Endgame had come out, and as everybody knows, biggest thing on the planet. Theaters packed left and right, and the joy on people's faces as they're coming out and like hugging each other with just like, I can't believe we experienced it. It's like, yeah, it's great. I had the same situation, packed house. I saw it really, really early in the day on opening day because same thing. I know how it works, social media. It's going to get spoiled. Somebody out there is going to be that guy. Although I can say in hindsight, a lot of people are really good about keeping the secrets. But it was awesome to get those wow moments and the roars from the audience and the applause. And it was awesome.
Men, there's a drive-in movie full of juicy people. Wow! It's a trap! Help! It's Pick! We've had it, men.
A pleasant aroma for you, but not for mosquitoes. Pick is easy to use. Light it and forget it. Pick's aroma keeps mosquitoes, gnats, and sandflies away. Pick is the best protection for barbecues, fishing and camping trips, or just relaxing in the yard.
So if you don't want our company ever anywhere, just light Pick and see what I mean? Bye!
Pick is on sale at the refreshment stand now.
Why don't we jump into things with some of our questions that we got from our fans? And again, if you guys want to stay in the loop, the social medias, best way to do it. The podcast, great way to do it. But also the Patreon. Jump over, join the fam.
Mr. Rob Tillich asks that musical question. I'm not going to sing it. What's the VHS Fest Holy Grail? Is there a dream set of 3 movies you'd love to press the play button on for the drive-in audience? Now, if for some reason you're listening to this podcast and you're not totally familiar with what we do and who we are, VHS Fest is a thing that began many years ago. We're up to 5 or 6 this year.
We're up to 6.
The 6th annual VHS Fest will be this year. We've partnered with Josh at Lunch Meat, and it's a celebration of VHS, of retro video store culture. So there are vendors that sell old tapes and old media and crafts and t-shirts and all kinds of cool stuff and toys. And then at night, we will show 2 or 3 movies per night, maybe more, that were video store movies, predominantly films that were shot on video, predominantly horror type stuff. And it's wild. It's projecting a VHS tape onto the biggest screen you've ever seen a VHS image on, and looking surprisingly not bad, considering the reputation that those have for resolution, and just bizarre stuff. And it's its own subculture, and it's a total blast.
That's the thing. It's become such a cult event, and one that has been the most organically grown because it's grown immensely each year. In fact, besides Joe Bob last year, it was our most well-attended event. And you tie in all the vendors, huge guest event. We had Linnea Quigley there last year. It's just such a blast for people. And Josh and Ross, their partnership in the thing it's amazing. And it's a great time to mention it because Ross from Saturn's Core Video just sent me a copy of Savage Harvest, which we screened last year at VHS Fest. And there was a documentarian there shooting, and it ended up on this really amazing Blu-ray that I believe it was Vinegar Syndrome put out. And there's a documentary on there that's pretty much all shot at VHS Fest, and it's an amazingly well done little mini doc, and it's a nice little peek into what VHS Fest is and what the heart of it is. It goes into the story of Eric Stans, who directed Savage Harvest when he was like 21 or something ridiculous. And he talks about the fact that he was really disappointed in the movie, and the fact that like he wanted it to be something that it wasn't. And the audience really took it into their hearts and made it kind of this cult thing. And seeing it at the drive-in, now that he's almost 50 years old, was kind of a mind boggler for him. And the way that they captured it was really, really amazing. And I always love when our world crosses with, the media world that we ultimately are connected with anyway. We work with all the big Blu-ray DVD distributors practically at this point, but it's really cool to know that like that's living out there on that Blu-ray. So check that out. Fun stuff. But as far as who asked the question?
That was Rob Tillich.
Rob.
So he's saying, what are 3 movies you would love to see at VHS Fest?
So VHS Fest, at least my touch on VHS Fest is it's kind of going from the outsider fan, but not the hardcore shot on video or necessarily horror angle fan. So when it came to booking, we have Ross from Saturn Score, who does and is a king when it comes to shot on video titles. So every year we usually have at least one a day, shot on video stuff. Josh at Lunch Meat, who is amazing, he traditionally will help me curate the rest of the day's titles. And it's interesting because over the last couple of years, it's been tied into guests. So we'll have a guest there and try to appease it with a couple titles. Now, we have done Shopping Mall, which we've talked about it on the last podcast, is very, very suggested. It's a loved title and one that people love to see on the Mahoning screen. And Jim Wynorski wrote that and directed that film. And he has a ton of VHS-esque titles. So I think that would be a really, really amazing kind of arc if we did a kind of a Wynorski night. As far as like a dream come true, we've done a lot of them. Think about VHS Fest 1, Mark. We did Faces of Death.
Yeah.
It's great. There's no more like insane title than that when you think about VHS and the world of VHS.
That to play that, I mean, that movie was produced and shot and edited on film and presumably may have played theaters somewhere once, but to see something that was always this, I mean, I've got a wacky Faces of Death story that I may have told on the podcast before, but this was always something that was watched, spoken about in hushed tones, and you kind of smuggled it into your house and watched it where your parents didn't know you were watching it. And the idea that we would throw that up on 100-something foot screen for the public and anybody in the Walmart parking lot with a pair of binoculars 2 miles away to see was just like, everybody was like, you're not going to show it, are you? We made sure we showed it last. And
yeah, it was really, really late at night. And again, it was VHS Fest 1. So did we draw a crowd? Yeah, but it wasn't anything like we do now. And the type of events that we do now. But it was a blast, man. That was the movie that, of course, got passed around the neighborhood. And like you can't say anything. And watching it now, I mean, it's kind of fairly tame. It's nothing that you wouldn't see yet.
It's clearly mostly fake. And
yeah, that was the whole thing is, ooh, it's real. They're eating monkey brains.
I remember seeing it for the first time, and you could tell. In a second, I'll tell you how I saw it for the first time. I remember seeing it for the first time. You could kind of tell a lot was fake. And then there was a later version. There was a documentary about it or about the series, because there were like at least 5 of them, and then multiple ripoffs and offshoots, like Traces of Death Faces, and on and on. The director of it did a commentary where they basically laid bare where the footage all came from, how it was shot, and some of it clearly, like it's supposed to be home movie footage, but there are multiple angles.
Right.
There's one on one of those tapes where somebody was supposed to be bungee jumping off a building, but they used a rope and died. But it was clearly fake. The way I first saw Faces of Death, I was in high school, Spanish class. The elderly, I say elderly, she was gray haired, she was older than me. The elderly teacher, this is like the weekend before, the day before Halloween. She said, the seniors have picked a film for you all to watch today. And in lieu of having Spanish class, and it was the old TV cart, the old square box TV on a cart that was facing the audience, shall we say, the students. Teacher was sitting at her desk behind the TV. So she never saw this. The seniors have picked out a movie. It's this documentary, some doctor studies death. I don't know. And she hits play, and I kind of knew what it was by that description. And she hits play, and up comes the old, was it Media Home Entertainment, whichever company put that out. And then I realized, holy shit, this is Faces of Death, which is a movie I'd always avoided watching because I heard it was like real death and horror and devastation. And I just sort of hunkered down, and for the length of that class period, which wasn't the whole movie, maybe it's like an hour or so, everybody was subjected to Faces of Death while the teacher sat behind the TV, like grading papers. I don't think she ever saw it. She ever knew what she was running. Now, our good friend, the late Mike McPadden, was doing one of his podcasts, Crackpot Cinema, I think, podcast, and he talked about when he was a kid, he duped his teacher in Catholic school or whatever into showing the class Faces of Death.
Wow.
And I was driving down to the drive-in that day from New Hampshire, and I heard that, and I had to like leave him a voice message immediately saying, oh my God, I had the same experience, only I was on the receiving end and not the giving end. And now they would like fire the teacher and burn down the school if that.
That's what I'm thinking is like now with everybody having cameras and this and that in their pockets, it's forget it. That person would be, yeah. But yeah, it's tough because I try to think about like stuff that hasn't been released or you can only see it on VHS, because that's the thing the studios always ask is like, why do you want to play this on VHS?
Well, we ran into that with AGFA, who has the AGFA represents, if you know AGFA, American Genre Film Archive, they started as a sort of a subsidiary or offshoot or branch of the Alamo Drafthouse chain in Austin. They came into a huge library of film and started amassing old weird genre cult horror exploitation movie, martial arts movie prints. And they've grown to the degree where now they represent the licensing for a lot of different film libraries digitally. And if they represent somebody who has recently done a restoration of a film like Rad, let's say, and you ask them, we want to play this on tape, they say, no, you have to play it in the new digital, Blu-ray or DCP restoration. Even if we want to show a print sometimes, like with Frank Henenlotter, they say, no, it has to be this new restoration. We want it to be this. So we run up against things where we want to play it on tape and the studio says no.
And the thing is, when we first started this, even though it was, only 6 years ago, I think that we've had a huge resurgence in physical media and all these companies digging into the vaults, so to speak, and bringing most of these titles that are only on VHS, quote unquote, to Blu-ray or big restored this or that. But it's funny because I'm totally in booking mode now. So I'm thinking about like guests and weird kind of tie-in things. And actually for VHS Fest, I've been watching a lot of movies at home and I popped in my copy of Meet the Applegates. You ever see that movie?
I know about it, but I've never seen it.
It's supposedly never released on anything besides VHS, maybe now. But it was the follow-up to Heathers, the guy who directed and wrote Heathers. So I was like, oh, I'm so in on this movie. And then I start going down this rabbit hole, this guy, Michael Lehman, and he did Hudson Hawk, which I freaking love. He did Airheads, which is like, for me as a guy who has been in bands, it's like the holy grail of like band movies. And like, I'm thinking, is this something that like we could tie in? They're all certainly like, they're movies that you probably experienced on VHS, so like they could work for a VHS Fest. But when I look at Hudson Hawk or even Airheads, I'm like, it's a great opportunity to play these things on 35. Hudson Hawk has one of those things about it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, where like it's infamously hated. Am I wrong?
It's a mix. It was critically lambasted at the time, and a lot of people didn't like it, but it's found an audience over time.
Right.
It's a movie that I always wanted to like. Like I remember my friends and I renting it on VHS when it was new because we'd heard about it, and in the ads made it look really funny, like this wacky slapstick thing.
Yeah.
And for me, it just really didn't work. Like I really wanted to like it more than I did, but I think it's what I saw it as a kid. I think there's a lot of people who saw it as a kid and
I'm there, yeah.
And it critical stuff didn't matter and it hit the funny bone at the right angle and they love it. And as they get older, these movies become beloved by the people who saw them when they were younger. So I think it's got a much bigger audience now than it probably ever did.
Yeah, nostalgia's a hella drug where it's like, it's crazy. It'll blind you. Sometimes I'll be like trying to sell fancy my lady on something, and it'll be like, what is wrong with you? I don't know. Maybe I just love this thing when I was
Val she does not get my tireless, unconditional love for Super Fuzz. She just doesn't get it.
She can't do it.
She gets annoyed every time I play the theme song. Granted, I play it pretty often. But I'm like, it's a different version. It's Katy Perry's Hot and Cold mashed up with the Super Fuzz theme. And she's like, no, it's just enough.
Not having.
So that's what I listen to in the car.
As far as a triple feature, something like that, it's really hard to answer that question because there's been so many dreams come true at VHS Fest. Was there 2 parts to that question?
No, it was, pick, a triple or movies you like, dream titles. It's one of those things where I would have to like go and look at my VHS shelf, which is not accessible to me from here right now, because the video store as a kid was my candy store. I was a film loving kid and the video store came along and my God, I would spend as many hours as you would give me just walking around looking at all the box covers. And it was all VHS at that time. And I rented a ton of stuff. And there was a lot of stuff that was produced for video or went straight to video or were really obscure things that people sort of found on video. And that's the kind of thing that I think of when I think VHS Fest. If it's anything we could get a really good copy of, like on film, I feel like we should rather do it that way. But when it's something like these shot on video things or movies that, there was never a film print. I jotted down a really quick list of things that popped into my head. There was a tape called Moron Movies. Did you ever see that?
Did that have a spaceman on the front of it?
No.
I'm thinking of Marooned.
No, Marooned is a movie I still want to see. Marooned, and what's the other one? Capricorn one. That's a double I need to do at home. Moron Movies. There's this guy named Len Sella, and he had these things. They used to call them Len Sella's Silly Cinemas, and they would be on TV's Bloopers and Practical Jokes, this Dick Clark, Ed McMahon show that was on NBC in the early to mid 80s. And it was like a blooper show, but they would do practical jokes on celebrities and they would show these short films this guy did. And they were like a minute long and they were just goofy. This guy shot in his house. That grew out of this tape released called Moron Movies, which might have been shot on some form of film, might have been video. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it was probably like an hour or so of just quick little sketches. I mean, there's this thing called Mr. Nasty that we play. It's a tape someone found somewhere. That's all these weird little sketches. And it's kind of pretty unfunny, but it's just bizarre and weird. And it was a straight to video thing. This might appeal to the people who like Mr. Nasty, although I think Moron Movies is actually funny at times. Yeah. There was a tape my friends and I rented in high school. I don't remember the full title, but the majority of the title was The Gourmet Zombie Chef from Hell. And it was some horror comedy about some chef who was a cannibal or something like that. And I just remember he was part of a cult called the Righteous Brotherhood. And at one point, this woman says to him, "You've lost that loving feeling." That is right in line with the kind of stuff that we show normally at VHS Fest. And then the other one that jumped into my brain because we had her out last year and she's great is the Linnea Quigley horror workout videotape.
Yeah, that's infamous. And it's funny that didn't hit the screen at some point last year. But yeah, that would be a great one to just drop in there, even if it's for a kind of a intermission interlude, you know. But I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about the memories that you have with VHS. And it's like, you know, a lot of my memories are with really kind of big blockbuster movies. And as a kid, and even when I was running the Hollywood Video for all those years of my life, it was like, you know, earnest movies, things like that like in reality we can get on 35. But while you were talking, I thought about it. The early Peter Jackson stuff, that was so big as far as passing the tape.
Bad Taste is one of those box covers.
Yeah.
Do you remember that box cover? It was the alien. God. It was the alien giving the let's say camera, giving the viewer the finger. And if that box was too offensive, they gave you a sticker that was a second finger. So it looked like it was doing the peace sign,
yes.
or the V sign, which in England is equally as offensive. But I remember going from video store to video store and seeing whether they had applied that sticker to the cover of the tape.
Oh, that's
great. That was a total VHS. I mean, it was shot on film. I've seen it on film. That's something, unfortunately, that we can't play in any form right now because he's doing 4K or high-end restorations of all his movies. And I believe the rights are in moratorium on
We tried at a certain point, and it was that even, I think, like 3 years ago. Like, we couldn't do it I think he even kiboshed another show that friends of ours were putting on where it was like, it was ready to go. And it was like, nope. Yeah, Meet the Feebles. That's a big one. If we could show that, that would be a perfect VHS Fest movie. People would love it.
If anybody had the guts to do a double feature of the Muppet movie and Meet the Feebles, it's just like send the kids home after that first one.
I believe the cover said Muppets on Acid, and it
something
was
like that. When I was in college, Keene State College in Keene, New Hampshire, the Film Society, the man who was the film booker for the Film Society, somehow knew and had a connection to the New Zealand film industry. And this is before anybody knew who Peter Jackson here was, unless they liked those movies. And we played all of them on film as a series of midnight shows over the course of a week. So it was all his movies, short films that he had done. And then we got, I think we got Heavenly Creatures when it was new. But yeah, on film, pristine prints flown over from New Zealand. So
amazing.
They have played theatrically.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, again, it's that thought of everybody has that VHS kind of titles in their head. And funny enough, I'm going through and been logging a lot of the suggestions over the last 2 months of the season. And a lot of the VHS Fest titles are making their way in. They're always so like super obscure. Like, hey, I want to see Kid Cop. I want to see, just things like that.
Hawk
where
Jones
it's just like random.
I have a copy of it. It's not a tape, but Hawk Jones is something I saw in clip form here and there online or as part of found footage or something. And that would be ideal for VHS Fest.
Yeah, maybe that's what we should do is reach out, because the Found Footage Fest guys, they tack a Sunday onto every single year of our VHS Fest, at least for the last 2 years. And it's the perfect kind of tie-in with what they do and what the event is. So maybe we reach out to them and say like, hey, if you had the choice, what's the insane title that you got to get out there? Because they, as you know, have pretty much scoured the universe for the weirdest.
Oh, I absolutely think we should, because that way you can always say, curated by, presented by.
If you didn't like it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I've been saying about the Patreon show that probably will have happened by the time people hear this, is that usually I am the one who picks the movies and puts them all together, but you're picking the movie this month. And what I've said a few times is, if you don't like it, blame Virgil.
Find Virgil. Well, that's a great question, my friend. We appreciate your Patreon age.
You enter the House of the Seven Hawks and meet two beautiful women. One, a seductive mystery named Constanta. The other, Elsa, who has the key to a fabulous treasure.
The House of the Seven Hawks.
MGM invites you to share the year's most exciting suspense adventure, the David E. Rose production, The House of the Seven Hawks.
On the spine-tingling way to this house, you'll meet Johnny Marsden. There is violence behind his eyes, and it's for hire.
You'll also meet Roner, the leer that walks like a man, Charlie, the triple-dealing double dealer, Decker, the perfumed one, and Sluter, the corpse.
You'll find that murder, a man for hire, a sack of diamonds, and a kiss all lead the crooked way to the House of the Seven Hawks.
Starring Robert Taylor, Nicole Maury, and Linda Christian on the big theater screen.
Now Derek S. asks, how about some Mystery Science Theater 3000 or Riff Tracks? Now, is that asking what we think of it, or is that asking should we play some at the theater? I have, speaking of, behind the scenes stuff, in the past, I have reached out to the manager for the Mads, which is Trace and Frank from Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah.
And we started to talk a little bit about maybe having them come out, because they do live shows. And they weren't doing anything at the time because it was in the thick of COVID land a year or so ago. But the idea was that, at a drive-in, you don't need to get near anybody. And everybody theoretically is spaced out. So that's something I would love to see us do someday, if and when they start up their in public shows again.
Yeah.
I don't know about showing that stuff.
With what we do, like a traditional drive-in, certainly it wouldn't even be an option. But ironically enough, we've talked about this as a kind of full-blown event. And when Jonah Ray was getting everything up and rocking again, it was right around the time that the Mahoning was starting to do their thing again, that we were starting to do our thing. And in a weird way, so super late at night, on a night when probably nobody was there, Matt and myself were wandering in front of the beams, and we started doing like Mystery Science Theater in the beams, so, the way you guys know how the drive-in works. If you walk in front of the projection booth, you may catch your head and you'll see it up on the screen, caught by the light up on the screen. And in reality, wouldn't it be the coolest thing ever if we had Mystery Science Theater guys come out, do their thing live with the live shadow in the bottom right corner? How nutty meta would that be?
I think it would be great. And there are, for people who may not know, if there's anybody, Mystery Science Theater 3000, it's a long-running entity that created by Joel Hodgson, which is basically a horror host show, or it's people watching a movie and making fun of it while it goes, which is damn annoying if you're in a theater with people just deciding to do that near you, but is when done by professionals in the right setting is one of the funniest things there is. And Mystery Science Theater ended, and then it split off into various forms of because it was a large number of people who worked on it. You had something called the film crew that was very briefly done with some video releases. You had riff tracks, which essentially started as these MP3s you could download of them riffing on just about any movie they wanted, because the movie wasn't included. You had to sort of sync it up yourself. So they could riff brand new movies. They could riff big stuff, Hollywood movies, stuff that previously they would have to pay for the rights and just never could do or get permission. And then Cinematic Titanic was another offshoot that did a lot of live shows, which I saw a couple times. And then the Mads Are Back with Trace and Frank. So there are various permutations of Mystery Science Theater. I would love to have any of them come out and do a live show. I've been a fan of all that stuff for a really long time. They're super sharp and funny, and the references are great. I haven't actually seen any of the new Mystery Science Theater, that sort of the revival that was done on Netflix, but I hear that's continuing with another season pretty soon. I don't know that we would show any of those as is, but having them come out live would be great.
Oh my God, yeah. Again, crossover with the audience, with what we do, leaning into their fandom, which certainly is ripe. So yeah, we would love to do that. And whether it's asking if we're going to try to do an event or whether we like it, I think you got your answer there, right? We're both fans.
Your attention, please. All new hotshot electric in-car heaters have been installed for your comfort and convenience. Just insert heater through car window and turn on the switch. When leaving, please turn switch off and replace on speaker post. Warning, high voltage. For your own safety, do not attempt to repair or remove wires. Do not attempt to open heater unit. If you need assistance, please notify the theater box office or concession manager.
Okay, our good friend Jean Beretta asks, if you could design the ideal drive-in theater and experience, what would it look and feel like? Let your fantasy flag fly.
We love Jean. Jean's become such a great part of the family. There's so many things about the Mahoning that have become so ideal, even though in a weird way they aren't the most ideal or the most economical way of doing things, if you will. Here's something like, we've talked about this, Mark, the idea of, wouldn't it be amazing to have a literal row of motel rooms in the back where people could get comfortable? If there were in a financial situation, hell, I'd go a step further and even build a whole back double wall. All rooms you can rent exclusive.
If reality and finances were not holding us back, that would be amazing. I've been to a drive-in like that. There were a couple historically. There was one in the Fairleigh Drive-In in Fairleigh, Vermont, still exists. I don't know if they're open anymore, but they still exist. And it was a little low-profile one-story motel. Every room had a picture window that faced the drive-in theater that was behind it, and had a little speaker box, so you could reach down and turn the volume up or down and sit on your bed and watch a movie. And it was a cool little theater nestled in the woods of Vermont. There's one called Doc's Drive-In in Texas that I follow online, and they have little tiny houses that are in the back that are movie themed, that are super small but could accommodate a couple people and with a view of their huge screen. I would love that. A row of cabins or a little motel in the back where, overnighters could stay or staff could stay.
Yeah, talk about a little modern kind of touch, even though, like you said, there are some that touch on that. I think that one opened in Texas that kind of does the same thing. Super limited, but it's like an Airbnb type of thing where you rent the rooms that are right there on the lot. And
it would be fabulous.
Talk about just a dream. We always joke about it whenever it rains. Put a dome over this place.
To me, the ideal drive-in is ours with a lot of modifications, like thick, tall trees all the way around it. No neighbors, trees to soak up the sound, to give you that even more of a woodsy vibe. We're bordered by neighbors on one side, a road on one side, and an airport. So because of the FAA rules, nothing can be very tall. Like, our screen is okay where it is, but I think Matt said years ago that somebody came over and like cut down a tree that was on the property because it was deemed too tall.
Crazy.
It was over sort of near the back of the lot. Working speakers, drive-in heaters. I'd love to have a drive-in that was year-round, like a winterized booth.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, a winterized snack bar, so that you could really go year-round and do Christmas shows and do, show The Thing when it's snowing and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like talk about that classic touch too. If we had the actual like speakers of the time and actual car heaters, that wouldn't, all of a sudden burst into flames.
Yeah. And I'm talking about, this is like a modern, we're not talking about let's go back in time and experience this, like a modern one where you could listen to it through your radio if you wanted the high quality sound, but if you wanted that vintage, tin can sound experience, we would have some speakers there.
Oh, it'd be so fun.
Ace projectors that were fully robust and worry-free and ready to rock. Ours are quite good shape. Like a bigger snack bar in some way, or a bigger kitchen. For us, there's not a lot of space behind the counter in the snack bar. There's enough for people to work in minimal storage and to do things.
Walkway.
Yeah, more space for maybe fountain soda, like we talked about in the previous Patreon show, for that Rico's cheese dispenser, for, more food options, more soda storage options, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Most of my dreams are just about more space and a way to keep the elements off us.
Yeah, things to make our lives a little bit easier. But we've talked about, and we actually toyed with the idea at the beginning of this last year, a stage under the screen. I think with what we do being so presentation, Q&A, appearance heavy, I think our theater would benefit highly from a stage, and that's something I think that we could work toward in the future. I don't know if it's something, I just think it would be a really fun idea and something we talked about really early on, but the idea of doing some sort of exclusive seating on the roof of like a
skybox.
Like we come and deliver the concessions to you, and it's you get a couple sofas up there or something. I don't think our situation is built for that. All of a sudden a couch comes crashing into the projection.
Well, there were a lot of drive-ins I've seen that have had in the past either picnic tables it depends on how their projection is set up too, but tables outside so you could sit and eat and watch the movie, or a row of seats. Some were constructed in such a way, I think oftentimes maybe the projection booth was on the second floor. There would be in like little booths inside, like in a little diner or restaurant inside the snack bar, where you could sit there and eat, but also watch the movie, be indoors. And some even had, I saw photos of one somewhere that had several rows of theater seating that faced the screen, that allowed people to either sit and eat, or if it was really cold, sit inside, or maybe walk-ups or bicycles or something like that, or maybe even to allow for people to comfortably watch, in the wintertime. But something like that would be cool. I just keep thinking about how, what's everything I'd like to tweak or make even cooler about our place.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, and in reality, that's kind of where we're at as we build. I mean, literally, we're hoping to build onto the theater. The idea of the pavilion, having a space where people can kind of hang out and always be protected. That's not the concession stand. The idea of creating some sort of coverage for Sandy and the outdoor vendors along the building, as far as like roofing, kind of an extension of the roof, if you will. But that's all stuff I think comes as we acquire the property. You know what I mean? We've always talked about it and then been like, do we want to invest, this into all of this before this is ours,
Well, we saw the possible outcome of that this last year, where it was like you could have sunk tons of money into dealing with certain things, and then suddenly you're told, okay, yeah, you're done.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That was a huge lesson of maybe we need to make sure we own it before we do anything really major that involves a lot of money that just might evaporate.
Totally. And baby steps is our move. I know that like as we grow, we pull in fans that are from all over the place, all walks of life. And some of them may not know kind of the grassroots approach that the Mahoning has been built on and is known for, So the idea of like snapping our fingers and getting the bathrooms to be able to handle hundreds of people when it never really could have.
That's anybody who knows our bathrooms. They've been more often than not closed the last couple of years because the plumbing is extremely old and the crowds are just gigantic. So often it just can't handle it. And that is one of the dreams of all of us, is to get those bathrooms renovated to a degree where they can handle,
our crowds. And that's the weird thing.
When you're talking about 800 people and, 6 stalls total, something like that.
Yeah.
It's a rough load.
Yeah, we've certainly outgrown what the space can handle, and the beautiful thing about what the Mahoning does and what we do as a team is, every year we figure out a way to put things in place to make sure that we can continue to grow in whatever fashion. So it's pretty amazing. People say that all the time, like talk about utilization of space. It's nuts. It's like what we do within those tiny 4 walls and that tiny amount of square footage is pretty insane. Yeah, lots of things that, man, if we had all the money in the world and it was, there's a lot of things I think we would love to do.
And Gene asks about, if you could design the ideal drive-in experience. We kind of do for us. I mean, I don't know if it's selfish or not, but everything I put into the place is to make it the kind of drive-in I would want to go to. And it was. That's why I started going there and still keep going. And it's just like, I think I'd love somebody to play really cool music and tell me interesting things before the movie starts. You got it. I think I'd love to see really cool retro trailers before these old movies. You got it.
Yeah, we've put a lot of things in place that make it, and that's why the Mahoning is what it is. There's nothing like coming to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater on a summer night that's just perfect and ideal. And I love when people come and have no kind of expectation besides, hey, a friend told me this was really fun, and then they get there and they're like so swept up in the culture and what we do that they're like, well, you now own my heart.
I think for me, the ideal drive-in experience might be coming to the Mahoning when everything is firing on all cylinders and working great, but me just coming as an attendee. Because well, you know what I mean? I did that a couple of times this year. It always feels really weird because I want to be useful and helpful and make sure everything's running well, being the general mangler that I am. But there were a couple nights where I just came to watch a movie and it was so luxurious and great to just experience it as a customer. I'm going through
old photos and things like that, videos, and even seeing the documentary on the Savage Harvest disc, and I'm like, wow, that happened. You're so in it and so making sure everybody's having a great time that, sometimes it's hard to actually, be present and experience it the way that others do,
You're invited to visit the refreshment stand, where you'll be greeted with fast, friendly service. You'll find hot dogs, juicy hamburgers, and mouth-watering delicious pizza. There are refreshing hot and cold beverages, ice-cold cola, and orange drink. Goes great with an order of crispy French fries. Then there's a wide selection of your favorite candies and other delicious snacks. And there's always a fresh batch of hot buttered popcorn to go with the rest of the show. So visit the refreshment stand now during this 10-minute intermission and add to your enjoyment of the movie. We're happy to have you with us tonight and hope you'll come back often.
So Dwight asks us, film genre you'd love to do a weekend for that you don't normally show, like film noir or beach movies. In that topic, also a few movies you'd love to show in that genre if a 35mm copy of the film was available. So some genres we don't normally show that you'd love to run, and what would some of the movies be?
Well, certainly those two.
I love the beach party movies. I grew up watching them on
We talked about
TV
that a
as
little
kid.
bit. Yeah.
They're fun. They're funny. If you find good prints, they're very colorful. I've got a IB Tech trailer for the first one. I would love to see, the classic is Beach Blanket Bingo. Maybe that and Muscle Beach Party as a double would be a blast. I don't know if Park Circus has those or not. I think they have Beach Blanket Bingo because I saw it at the Somerville Theater in Boston years ago on film. It was a little washed out and splicey, but it was there.
Yeah. certainly like, it's really hard because we've talked about this, about how unfortunately sometimes when we really swing for the fence with genres that aren't kind of what Mahoning's known for, like action or kung fu or things that we really, really love, they don't do what horror and a lot of these other kind of big family nights do. So we don't do them as often. But man, oh man, there's so many genres. I'd love to do a heist night, be able to play thief. You know what I mean?
I'm a sucker for heist movies.
Oh, so good, you know? Hell, I mean, even if we got into like the space opera or even like weird mockumentaries, things like that, you know? I'm thinking of stuff that like when I was in the video store, you know, like we would do curated days. Like we would pick what we all wanted to watch during our shift. And kind of the way we would do it is we would lean into a genre. So it would get really strange though. Like, you know, it's not your on the nose drama or horror or whatever. It's like movies connected to Jack Nicholson in some way, but he's not in it. You know, some strange things like that. But
as you say, we've tried a lot of these and a lot of them sadly didn't do well. Harry did a Bigfoot night that was so much fun. Didn't do that great, but so much of this was earlier on before we built the audience and the reach that we have now.
Yeah.
He did my favorite night that I never attended, which was East Meets West. And it was spaghetti Westerns one night and Kung Fu the second night. That's the kind of thing I would love. Fun genre. Beach Party. Absolutely. We've talked about that. I would love it.
Yeah.
Bond movies. I would love, which we just haven't gotten around to yet. I love the kind of stuff Harry shows. I love the weird exhumed type stuff. So trucker movies. I would love to see a night of trucker movies and get a big rig out parked under the screen and people can take their picture inside a Mack truck or something.
Yeah.
Movies with bands in them, not necessarily concert movies, but those oddball movies where the bands are the stars of the movie. Like there was a Herman's Hermits movie and most of it was 60s. There was the Dave Clark 5 did a movie, stuff like that. Again, these are all things that nobody would show up for except me, but you're asking what you want to see. Elvis night would be kind of fun.
There's a ton of, I call them selfish bookings, you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's something that, yes, you love, and there may even be several people, you know, on the crew that are into the idea, but you're thinking about the kind of mass audience, you know, do we want to pull in 100 people or do we want to pull in, you know, 20?
And that's oftentimes people will be disappointed that we're showing something really obscure on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's because those are not the nights that usually pull in a ton of people and we can't.
That's when we take the risks and we're doing a lot of that.
It's a huge risk to blow a Friday on something really foolish like, I don't know, Masters of the Universe and Howard the Duck.
Yeah, and at the Mahoning, we've tapped into so many genres, you know, but I think certainly the music concert movie is something that we want to do more of. I'm thinking of things that like, you know, really have worked that, you know, we kind of weren't sure that they would work or not. I think about it all the time. I would love to, because of being brought up on Westerns and war movies and things like that with my grandfather. It's like, man, I would love to do a kind of a war-themed, battle-themed weekend, you know, but it's tough. It's really tough. It's like the idea of playing Schindler's List. Like that would look beautiful on the Mahoning screen, but man, how?
And if you do, a drive-in I know of has already done it. The ideal co-feature, apparently, Pretty in Pink.
It's true. And play Pretty in Pink the second feature, right?
I think you have to cleanse the palate with something. You're pretty depressed after the end of Schindler's List. It's a little uplifting, but it's a sad film. So you want to just, you know, cleanse the palate with Pretty in Pink.
I want to meet that booker and be like,
I'm not going to name the drive-in, but one did that. And I would love to hear the rationale behind that. I had to look at it several times. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Second? I guess. Okay.
Totally.
Probably makes more sense.
For me, the dark comedy stuff. I mean, I look through my VHS collection and stuff that I have amassed from working in the video store, and it's a lot of dark comedies. It's a lot of stuff that like hit me at the right time, and you know, it's funny because dark comedies is such a hard sell on a mass level, where it's like, oh, this movie's a dark comedy. It's like, well, you know, you're cutting out a huge part of the audience there. So it'd be really fun to do that. You know, maybe that's something to toss into VHS Fest. Just like try out a night, you know.
Thanks for coming to our show tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to serve you. We think it's great to be able to enjoy fine entertainment in the comfort and privacy of your own car. The come-as-you-are atmosphere is a pleasant way to relax in the evening. Don't you agree?
Albert Mariotti asks, or says, the Star Wars ripoff genre. You guys may have already done this, but I was just thinking a Star Wars ripoff weekend could be fun. Maybe some Star Crash, Battle Beyond the Stars, Last Starfighter, Ice Pirates. The list goes on.
Could be fun. That sounds like a dream right there. We've talked about things like this.
Star Crash is so awful and so fun.
Yes, we talked about like the E.T. ripoffs and, you know, things like that. Like foreign ripoff movies, you know?
Turkish everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we played, what did we have tied into Freddy Fest this year, Mark?
Oh, it was this film. I may be getting the title wrong, but I think it was called Macaul. And it's this insane Bollywood Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff. And because it's a Bollywood movie, it's a romance, it's a musical, it's an action movie, and it's a horror movie.
It was
amazing.
Insane. And it opened our eyes to be like, well, if we want to do a little tap on at the end of a double feature and just be like, well, strap in, folks. You didn't know you didn't know this existed.
What are your plans for the next 3.5 hours?
Yeah, that's fun stuff.
There's one called, I believe, Message from Space, Warning from Space. They're both movies. One is, I think,
and they're both Star Wars ripoffs.
Oh yeah, one is a Toho, I believe, and the other stars Vic Morrow, and it's laughably awful. Much like Vic Morrow's performance in Great White, the other, ripoff of a huge film from that era that he did. I can't remember if it's Warning or Message, but both of those would be fun. I think you certainly could, because we all know, we say endlessly, we can't show Star Wars. We want to, everybody wants us to. Lucasfilm or Disney will not allow it. So the next best thing, I guess, is to show movies that are just almost Star Wars, but not quite.
Has so many elements of Star Wars. Last Starfighter crushes whenever we play that at the Mahoning. I think about this all the time. I wasn't a huge Star Wars kid. Like, Star Wars came into my life kind of later than it should have, But I think about how much I loved Masters of the Universe, which we played at the Mahoning.
Right.
And in such a weird way, there's so many tie-ins and ripoffs of Star Wars. Even the score. The score is literally like Imperial March ripoff, things like that. And I'm like, wow, I really love this. It's like, well, no shit.
It's funny. A lot of Hong Kong martial arts movies in the 70s into the 80s would rip off scores from American movies. I remember seeing one that just lifted the theme from Shaft as its opening theme, but it would keep chopping out whenever Isaac Hayes would speak. And there's also several movies I've heard that use music from Star Wars. And so it would be funny to throw a Kung Fu movie up there and everybody's like, what is this? And then the music kicks in and they say, yes. And then you end it with Spaceballs.
Yeah, Spaceballs, we've done. One of my favorites. Black Hole, we've done. Total kind of in that
Moonraker.
Yeah.
Star Wars inspired, not necessarily rip-offs,
so
but yeah. I saw Moonraker was the first Bond film I ever saw. I saw it at the drive-in as a kid. I was 4.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I think it's awful now, but as a little kid, it was just, oh my God, he's in space. There's lasers.
Yeah. Crawl. Yeah, it's so hard because there's so many. I mean, if you want to kind of get into the direct ripoffs, those ones are great that he mentioned. And we played Laser Blast, right?
Yes, it ran during, I think, a real weird weekend. It's because it's on the poster.
Early Harry, with that weird. It's so hard, so hard to say like, hey, this is the one that I'd want to say. I mean, let's be honest. For me, I'd play Masters of the Universe twice. Because I love it.
Okay, some of you may not have enjoyed that. Just try it again. Here we go.
We played it for one of our greatest titles for a weekend, Second Chance.
I like that idea. That's a weekend. So that's at a weekend to slide Hudson Hawk into. Hudson Hawk and Ishtar or something like that.
There it is. Yes. But yeah, it's something like that. That's, man. And that's the perfect, again, blinded by your childhood goggles. where it's like nobody could ever tell me Masters of the Universe isn't the greatest. There's a laser whip in it, bro.
Hey, you're not the only one.
That's right.
The fear of the year is here. Dr. Block and Mr. Hyde, a monster he could not control, had taken over his very soul. A screaming demon rages inside, turning him into Mr. Hyde, an unstoppable black Superman. Super strong, supernatural, and super bad. His punch can topple a skyscraper. His kick can split the earth in two. More destructive than an earthquake. Mightier than a tidal wave. A one-man disaster area. Dr. Block and Mr. Hyde. When you're seeing what ain't, you're looking at a haint. Shot full of lead and he still ain't dead. Jump back, Jack, for your skull is cracked. Dr. Block and Mr. Hyde. Starring Bernie Casey, Rosalind Cash, Stu Gillum. Directed by William Blackula Crane. Dr. Block and Mr. Hyde. Rated R. Under 17. Not admitted without parents. So bring your mama. She'll like it too.
Brian Prutting says, weird tales from the drive-in. In thinking about Gene's passing, he must have had many funny and interesting stories and drive-in lore that he related to you guys about the years he was there. Would it be possible to retell some of them? Running a theater, you're not only making memories for yourselves, but also for the hundreds of thousands of people who visit each season. There must be some memorable, funny, and interesting stories about the customers and things that have happened there that you've yet to tell. That would be a great topic for a book, too. So,
All right.
so you haven't mentioned it on the podcast yet.
Yes, that's true. Thank you for bringing that up. Definitely worth mentioning. We lost a member of the Mahoning family over the last week or so in Gene DeSantis, who was the original projectionist and worked at the theater for decades in the projection booth and was such a staple there. And those of you guys that have seen the documentary and have discovered us because of the documentary, Gene is beloved, a little beloved character from that film. And as you say in that film, Mark, he is, and probably will forever be, our connection to a time that we can't get to, because we weren't here. So Gene was filled with stories, and some of them I can't tell you because Gene was a great personality. He never lost his flair for life, never lost his flair for women, never lost his flair for entertainment. And he loved telling stories of his heyday, when he was really firing on all cylinders and doing his thing at the drive-in. And to think back on that, like the movies that were playing, the cars that were on the lot, the feel, the experience that must have been, as far as the epitome of cool. If you think what we do now is amazing, like toss the car culture on there, toss, all that stuff onto there, it would be amazing. But I'm trying to think of choice stories that I can tell that Gene has told me.
Do you know roughly when he stopped working as a projectionist there? So it would have been from 1949 until roughly when?
Gosh, that's probably a great question for Jeff. When we have Jeff on for the next pod, maybe we'll dig a little bit deeper into the legend of Gene. But for me, Gene was connected, I think, pretty much not long before Jeff got there. So I would say like maybe the 90s, you know what I mean? But think about that run. That's insane.
50 years?
That's insane, So Gene used to always talk about his dedication to projection and how, money never meant anything to him as far as why he did it. And he busted his butt. He would go from his day job at the electric company, which whenever the electric company is out on the lot, they still ask about Gene. But he would rock that full-time, overtime, and then he would do the drive-in all through the night. And man, an insane work ethic and such a fun character. And we'll certainly give him his due diligence in maybe a longer form on the next pod when we have Jeff there. Jeff has a little more history in general with the theater, as you guys all know. So in turn, he has the most history with Gene as well.
I'm always fascinated by anybody from the theater's past who stops in and has anything to tell me about the way things used to be, because I'm deeply involved with the place, obviously, and we only really mostly know about what's gone on since we've been there and since Jeff's been there. But the place has been around since 1949, and filling in those missing years and decades is always really exciting for us. And to see photos of what the place looked like in the past, or, I'm digging through the old newspaper ads and newspaper articles and things like that. So weird tales from the drive-in. There's a weird tale at that drive-in pretty much every night that it's open. We try to tell as many that we can recall here. There are so many, they sort of get a favorite phrase of mine, they get tamped down into your memory. So it's like peeling the layers of a fluffy Pillsbury biscuit away. It looks like one thing, but there's like a million things in there.
Yeah, Gene was amazing. He was always great to visit, and we would talk about all sorts of things. Sports, we would talk about, stuff that was going on just in the news. He was a very kind of sharp guy, which I always thought was amazing for somebody who was up there in age. And he lived a really long, amazing life, and we should all be so blessed. So rest in peace, Gene. We love you. And hey, you know what? His niece reached out recently through the social medias, because we made a nice post about Gene and his involvement at the theater, and she reached out and thanked us and actually said, hey, would you guys want any of the movie memorabilia that he has, any of the Mahoning memories and stuff that he has here? It's like, that's gonna bring so much love to what we do here. So we'll be sure to share all that stuff with you.
That's really exciting. I've tried to reach out to the man who ran the drive-in that I went to as a kid. He ran the drive-in and the indoor theater that I used to go to, because I would love to get photos of anything he still has, like company letterhead, old photos of the interior of the place, anything. And I wonder if Gene has any of that, any old Mahoning documents, as it were, because I would find it fascinating and love to share it online in our various streams.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're happy to announce that we've installed Burns-O-Matic in-car heaters for your comfort and pleasure. When you receive your heater, you'll find it very easy to place in your car. Just roll down your front window and rest the heater's bracket on the window with the cylinder on the outside of the car. Roll up your window securely as far as it will go to hold the heater firmly in position. For maximum results, tilt the face of the heater towards the windshield and sit back and enjoy the show in healthful comfort. With these modern, safe, efficient in-car heaters, this drive-in theater will now remain open all year round. If you have any further questions about your Burns-O-Matic in-car heater, please contact one of our theater attendants. And remember, this drive-in theater will now remain open all year round, regardless of the weather.
So our good friend and as we say, family member, Carl Mazzella asks this pressing question: a peanut is neither a pea nor a nut. Discuss.
Wow, I never thought of that. He's so right.
But it is a nut, isn't it?
Yeah.
If we're getting it down to brass tacks in medical science, maybe it's not. But to me, it's a nut. Looks like a nut.
I mean, a peanut? What is he saying? It's neither a pea or a nut? It is a nut.
I thought the deal with nuts is that they were once sort of beans that just got hard, and now they're nuts.
Yeah, like when I think of a nut, I kind of think of a peanut. You know what, Carl? You're a peanut.
Or the peanut. This could be the most controversial question we've ever been asked.
Yeah, I'll tell you. You know?
Michael Gearson says, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, critically acclaimed or popular movies or franchises that you just don't enjoy that much.
Wow.
I don't get the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. Sorry. Didn't like them.
Wow.
Yeah. There you go. There's some controversy for you.
Talk about controversy, guys. You can find Mark at the...
I'm always on the move. For years, that was actually true. I was like literally like almost always either at work or in my car driving somewhere. So it was kind of hard to find for a while.
I have this mantra, and I've had it for a really, really long time, about not talking publicly, at least about movies that I don't like, you know, because like I had this thing coming up in film school and on the stage and blah, 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 where it's like, you know, encouragement is kind of my MO, and kind of the only fuel that kind of keeps me going in life is the encouragement of it all. So the idea of like shit talking something is really tough, but I'll do it. Let's do it.
I'm trying to jog my memory to think of things, because there's been a lot of things that people just really love that I don't find that great for my taste. But it's a matter, it's subjective, you know. It's all what people, as I've learned, and I used to say all the time on the review show I do, people like different stuff.
Yeah, it's really tough. I'm trying to think of things that are like going on in my modern day life with my munchkins and everything. We watched Lilo and Stitch the other day.
Yeah,
I don't like that movie.
He's not a Lilo booster.
Look, if you're out there and you're saying Lilo and Stitch is my jam, it's not.
I don't gravitate toward kid movies as an adult, but I would say the majority of them that I wind up seeing, I do like.
Yeah, it took a while with the Harry Potter movies for me. When they were first coming out, Harry Potter movies were not for me. And that happens a lot, you know, even some of the Marvel stuff. When that first started coming out, it took me a while to come around to it. I remember when Civil War, I think, might have been the first one that I kind of jumped onto, you know what I mean, with kind of the new Marvel train, you know. But now I look at them as a certain element of cinema that's kind of essential right now, you know. And for me as a moviegoer, I really love the experiences that Marvel gives me, maybe sometimes more than the others.
It might be essential to keeping theaters in business right now.
That's for damn sure. I haven't seen a line like that to get popcorn in a long time.
And getting tickets for Spider-Man No Way Home they did this big, it was like a Black Friday or Spidey Thursday or Spidey Saturday, whatever. It was a big online pre-sale thing. And all the servers crashed, like all of the chain websites to get tickets, you couldn't. And it was really popular. And it's movie after movie since the pandemic, you know, paused theaters for a while, have been the one that are going to save the theater. People thought it would be the Bond movie. It really wasn't. But I think Spidey, I don't know if anything's going to save the theater, but Spidey's the first one I've seen where it was just like, damn, there's a lot of people here. And people are repeatedly seeing. You saw it twice already. I would go see it again. Not a lot of movies I would want to see more than once lately. Mandy is a movie I really didn't like, that a lot of people love.
Wow, how dare you? Thank God.
And I just thought it was garbage.
Thank God Robert's not on the podcast.
I think Nicolas Cage in general is just a bad actor. He's quite good sometimes, but most of the time I don't get the Nicolas Cage fetishism where everybody is going crazy at this guy who goes over the top all the time. I watched this movie Prisoners of the Ghostland that he was in, and it was awful. And I don't get it. I hate the found footage genre. We're just gonna hate for a few minutes. I can't stand found footage movies. Blair Witch was innovative and interesting. No, they're hard to watch. They're an excuse to just not try with your style or technique. I feel like we've come 100, 200, whatever, however many 100 years of cinema, and the people who were the fine craftsmen who made great movies that were beautiful to look at and striking visually would look at this and go, really? This is, we've stood on each other's backs this far and then you just jumped off. It's an excuse for bad acting, bad dialogue. I get taken way out of the movie by the logical gymnastics that are gone through as to why somebody's always filming something. I really don't like them. I won't watch them.
How do you really feel, Mark?
Well, I could take it or leave it.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, that the easiest one for us to hate on in our house is the Fast and Furious franchise.
I don't like those.
That's almost become a mockery in itself. I think the last one we saw in the theater, there were like robot cars, like they were all kind of sentient. They were controlling themselves. I was like, what happened?
I've been saying what will redeem that series for me, if you send them into space. If you put them in their cars that are like the space shuttle, they're strapped. They have to go into space. They have to do something on the moon. They got to get to the moon before the bad guys do. If you put them in space, they're in their muscle cars that are strapped to giant rockets, and then they're doing like crazy zero gravity stuff on the moon. I'll be like, okay, you have accepted how ridiculous this series is and embraced it. I did like Hobbs and Shaw, funny enough. I thought that was fun. But
I saw Hobbs and Shaw, yeah. And see that it's so tough because, like, you know, again, I can get hell even out of when we saw at the drive-in, whatever that Fast and Furious movie was. I still loved it. I still had a lot of fun with it. A lot of franchises go off the rails, so like I start to hate them. You know, like I've lost trust in the Terminator franchise. I've lost trust in a lot of things like that. I'm trying to think of like huge ones, like what certain ones that just don't play to us. Like, of course, we wouldn't be fans of Twilight unless I'm wrong, Mark.
I never watched them. It didn't appeal to me.
Hunger Games, that was never my jam. I never saw a Hunger Games movie.
I was okay with them.
Yeah.
And then it's so funny. So Harry Potter ended, and then Hunger Games ended, and the studios were like, we need a big franchise. So you started getting all these kid wizard movies and dystopian teen dramas, and everybody was like, yeah, we don't really care. And then they're like, oh, we're 2 movies into this 4-movie thing. We're going to keep pumping out these Maze Runner films and hope they catch on.
Yeah, I hate when they franchise out things that just have no right being kind of franchises or having multiple movies, but it's all about the money, you know, and these things start making money. What was that franchise that was like Annihilation? Not what the hell was it? It had Woodley?
Shailene Woodley.
Yes. What was that? Remember? There was like Divergent. All the Divergent movies. Yes.
I was hoping they would have one called Detergent, and it's just her trying to get her whites whiter.
That's what I mean. Like that doesn't play to me. Even with Movie Pass, I ain't going.
I saw them and they were that might have been when I still had Movie Pass. I've done a movie review show for years and years on public access, and I would see everything that came out at my local theater, which was like a 6 screener, so it wasn't a huge amount of stuff, but I would see all these things, and some of them I just barely have any memory of. Like I forgot that existed until you just mentioned it. And I remember them being okay, but they just clearly felt like we really want another Hunger Games. Even if, and I'm like, I don't care if it's based on a popular, teen novel, young adult novel from years ago. The only reason you're doing this is because you desperately want another Hunger Games.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is sometimes you see these things pushed out as like, they're revving up for a franchise. You're like, all right, give me a good movie first before you start thinking about your saga here.
But there have just been things that I've seen that are wildly popular, and I just don't enjoy them. But I think that's true of everybody. No matter every movie is somebody's favorite movie. I've seen things that I thought were totally worthless, and somebody's like, "Oh my god, it's an underrated classic." Okay,
and
I'm glad you like it.
That's why this podcast has never gone that route. I listen to a bunch of podcasts that shit on movies, and I think it's hilarious. But this podcast is about. There's so many people who come up to us throughout the year and say, your story inspires me. It really uplifts me to be able to continue to do what I do, to see your success. And, that's something that we, and certainly myself, have taken into our hearts and now like to kind of carry on. If this story inspires somebody and lights their fire, that's well worth it. Such a gift to us.
So what else you hate?
I hate movie theater pricing. I'll tell you that. Now that I'm having to experience that shit, it's funny because even with the free movie that I get, it's like I'll always take my, pops, my sister, my brother, my munchkin to the movies, and it's like, god damn! By the time you buy a couple sodas, a couple popcorns, you're like, what happened?
I forgot about that for the longest time because, again,
we're spoiled.
Doing this review show, I didn't have to pay for anything except food. And then I had Movie Pass for the longest time. Then I had Alamo Season Pass, and now I have A-List. And then I work at a movie theater where I don't have to pay for anything. Yeah. But then you do go and you do take somebody and you're like, golly, that's a hit to the wallet. And I can see why a lot of people don't go all the time, and why so many people, for the longest time, it was, if you're in the big city, you might be paying almost $20 to see a movie when you could buy it on Blu-ray for the same. I think physical media is becoming more of a rare thing for the vast majority of the public, but still, I can see why people don't go. I just love the experience so much and don't want it to go away. And I was just reading an article today about box office revenues in the AMC chain and all that. And somebody said, hoping something will be around forever doesn't mean it will be. You need to actually spend money to support it. So I'm going to go see a movie with A-List in an hour, and I'm going to buy popcorn and a soda, even if it's a lot of money, because that's my lunch.
Yeah.
When I used to go to the local theater all the time, I would always say I would like, a medium popcorn and a large Dr. Pepper, or as I like to call it, lunch. I would be going at noon and seeing a couple movies there, and I knew that's all the food I was going to get for a while.
Right.
Luckily, a lot of theaters do have, not that this is a big commercial for AMC, but they have better food options than just popcorn and soda, as do we. And we go to this place like the Alamo or Movie Tavern where you can get a full-on pretty tasty meal with your show that cushions the blow a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody stepped their game up, that's the beautiful thing. And it's hard for me to say I hate it. I just only say that because it's literally fresh on my mind coming out of it.
Yeah.
A family outing. But yeah, there's very few kind of things that I go out and actively am like on the hate train, If we want to do a hate episode, we got to bring Carl back.
Oh, yeah.
Carl's the perfect, and Carl's great because like the joke is Carl hates everything, but he can back it up. He always has something to say on like why he does not like it.
He has standards, and he also likes a lot of things that are surprising. So it's
I love someone with that wears their heart on their sleeve like that. Could be so honest.
In general, I like most movies, and I like pretty much, again, aside from found footage, I love pretty much every genre. I'm like a voracious film watcher. It's like somebody who never stops being hungry. That's what I've always been like for movies. Going back to the video store thing, I would rent as many movies as I thought I could possibly stay awake to watch for the rental period I had them out for as a kid and in college. And the piles of physical media I have at home are perhaps troubling to the unready eye. I love movies, and I obviously when you watch as much as you do, you don't like them all. I think most normal people, the average American cinema goer, goes to movies they think they're really going to like. And I go to see things that I'm taking a chance on.
I've gotten more into that.
You said West Side Story was good. It doesn't look good to me, but I want to see it because I hear it's good. And maybe it will be to me, maybe it won't.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm more willing to take risks. I mean, when I was younger, it was very much like, unless this is playing to me, I ain't dropping my buck down. But that makes sense because it's like, you got limited bucks, you're a kid.
Yeah.
But, in a situation now where, you can take some more risks. And I love it because we have so many folks who come to the theater that are involved in the movie industry. So
it's amazing.
It's really cool to be like, oh, wow, Gavin's movie's playing at the Regal, or, oh, hey, so-and-so's movie is here. So it's pretty cool to be able to get out there and support on a regular basis the industry that supports us. So go out and see movies, guys. This is the off season. And again, I can't say it enough. If you guys want to get in on the fun in the off season, jump on over to Patreon, see what we're all about. We're going to be doing some really fun stuff on the social medias as well, with raffles and giveaways and fun things like that. So keep your finger on the pulse and stay with us.
We have most of a box of Blu-rays and DVDs that were donated to us from Kino Lorber Home Video. Really top tier stuff that I would pay for, but because I'm honest, they stay in the box. They gave it to us for raffles at the theater during the season. We didn't use them all, so now I want to get this box out of my house. So we are doing a lot of comment here and maybe you can win giveaways. All of our Patreon virtual simplex screenings, we do a raffle based on we randomly draw somebody who's participating in that screening. On our Patreon in general. We'll throw a disc up every month. We're doing that on the Facebook page. It's just be aware of us and we'll win your heart with free stuff.
That's right. That's how we roll. Maybe in the new year, we'll do like a big raffle where we pull some of our regulars in and do something real big. But it's funny because, we're going to blink and a couple months is going to pass and then Mark's going to be getting more boxes of Blu-rays to give away to you guys.
Oh, yeah. Not too far into the new year. I'm going to start sending those letters out again.
It's been a year since you've heard about it. Months that you've been reading about it. Now it's here. The most exciting original motion picture event of all time is here. King Kong. King Kong. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. The waiting is over. King Kong is here.
The last question is from Kyle Park. Could be fun to dive into concert films, a lost art. We just talked about this in a recent podcast. I don't know if it was the Patreon only or if it was the last one that we did with Jeff. We love concert movies. We've run a couple that have done quite well for us. And I think it's something we should do every year, is pick a concert movie as a single feature on some weekend night. I think concert movies are a lost art because it's a big financial investment that is really hinging upon enough fans of that act going to pay to see something.
Yeah.
And I think in the current film marketplace, that's harder to do. I mean, they still get made, but I think a lot of times they wind up going straight to streaming.
Yeah, honestly, we've talked about it. It's perfect with what we do. It's hyper focused into fandom, and people can come out and pregame and watching a concert movie up on the big screen.
It's like going to a concert.
Yeah, one of my best favorite memories, I'll never forget it, is watching the Woodstock doc with my father in the field, like literally like you would if you were at Woodstock up under the screen. And it was like I was there, and, you know, all music of my father's time, singing along. It was transformative. It transported me there, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I have a lot of bands I love. I mean, Jesus, if you ever do the research, you could do an annual weekend of Rolling Stones concert movies. They did concert movies like every couple of years for a decade or more. It's actually shocking when you see how often they had a concert film. So many bands I like do have concert movies. The number that would be available on 35 is questionable. I think once you get past Rattle and Hum or so, there weren't a lot getting theatrical releases. They were going straight to VHS or DVD or whatever, but
yeah,
it's interesting. And as we said, you know, you're catering to different fandoms as you do that. You can do a Rolling Stones night and say, hey, Stones fans, come see it on the big screen, and wear your favorite concert t-shirt. You know, it could be a lot of fun. We did that with Detroit Rock City. We didn't have a concert movie to show, except, you know, 2 minutes at the end of the movie. But it was a night for Kiss fans, and it was a total blast. So it's something that we have thought about. Do you have a favorite concert movie that you can think of?
Yes, without a doubt. So I used to watch Pink Floyd's Pulse on loop. It would pretty much start my day those 8 years that I was running the video store. I'd come in and put on Pulse, let the whole thing run through. It was really long, and it kind of get my day started. There was an amazing, at that time, I watched it until it wore out, Rage Against the Machine concert video, which it's got the kind of black and red lettering on the front, but it was early. Might have just been that first album, but that was humongous for me. And the Oingo Boingo farewell DVD, I guess, or concert. I love that concert so much. I kind of know the versions that Danny Elfman and crew do on that live album or, you know, concert video more than sometimes the actual recorded version. So yeah, those mean a lot to me. But I can say we are working on some for this coming year. So for those of you guys that are fans of this idea, we have at least 2, and Mark's spearheading 1. So that's going to be really, really, really fun. You got any tops?
For me, the one I've watched the most and loved the most is Elvis, That's the Way It Is, which is a recording of him in 1970. I keep thinking about this. 1970, it was the Zeppelin existed. Zeppelin was putting out a new album in 1970. The Stones were putting out great music. Elvis was putting out great music. The Beatles still sort of kind of existed. So many amazing, iconic things were kind of still around at that point. It was 1970. He was rehearsing to do his debut in Vegas for that season. It wasn't his return to Vegas. He'd been doing it for a year or two before that. But it was him in just like great shape, doing really good songs. So you see him and his band rehearsing the songs and then him doing a full-blown show. And it's amazing. To me, it's him at the top of his game. And I have seen that on film in the theater, and it was really, really cool to see with an audience who were like won over by it. I'm trying to think of any other concert movies. Stop Making Sense is the one everybody talks about. And
yeah, that's a great one.
I don't know. I'm sure there have been some. Song Remains the Same is interesting because it's this weird mix of concert footage and like filmed segments. A lot of people say it's not great because they were at the end of a tour and really tired, but how many other Zeppelin concert movies do you have?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the thing. Everybody's got their favorites, you know, like I loved when I was coming up, you know, they started putting out a lot more concert videos. You know?
Yeah.
So they weren't those things that got the big releases, but I think I talked about this on the podcast, but this was right around the Movie Pass days. I went to see Muse put out a live concert in theater concert, and I went to see it, and I wanted to see it so badly, and I forgot my Movie Pass. and I totally forgot my wallet as well.
Oh.
And this woman took total pity on me behind me and bought my ticket.
Oh, wow.
And I went in and I had such a blast with that movie. That's the thing. It's like, if you have a special place with the artist catalog, you know, and something caters to you that hard, like, how you not?
I've read about more legendary old concert movies than I've probably actually seen.
Oh, duh. Okay. How did I not pick this up? What's the name of the person that asked the question? Kyle Park, I think, right? So Kyle Park, we love Kyle. He actually runs Neshaminy Creek Brewery, which we are in talks with in the off season. That's all I'll say there. But I think I know Kyle's favorite concert movie, and it's a staple in his household. And it actually is a staple as well. For me, the album is more than the actual movie.
HR Puffin Stuff Live at the Hollywood Bowl. Which
Ding,
features
right on
the
the
opening
nose.
act was the Brady Kids.
That's
maybe
one.
no, that's just me. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Last Waltz, the band.
Oh, yeah.
That is, to this day, one of the finest concert films. And for me, I have the vinyl record of the soundtrack, and it's pretty amazing. For those of you guys that haven't seen it, it's star-studded. The music is just sweeps you up like a dream. But I think Kyle, when I went down to visit him fairly recently, I think he said he watches it every single year for a certain holiday.
It's a Thanksgiving movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
He'll have to let us know. But yeah, we love Kyle. We love the folks at Neshaminy Creek. So stay tuned. That's all I'll say.
And that's all we have.
And that's it. And I think that's all we have to say. So it's been amazing hanging out with you guys. Again, get ready. Couple more months. Season's coming back, 2022. And on that note, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.